If you can name that song, beautiful people, you win a trip to Hawaii. Supernatural. Hey Diane, whoever can name the song, you get a trip for two to Hawaii. All right, no one can name it? All right, Supernatural by Ben E. King. We're going to be talking about a lot of natural things. Natural. Okay. Hi, beautiful people. Happy Friday. Happy Eve. So happy to have you here, my 9 million followers. I'm so pumped. I'm going to keep the intro very quick, and then I'm going to ask Mike to ask, I think he's already in there. Very quick intro. It's my second interview with him, one of my favorite people in the world. Mike Perrine is the creator of Everyday Detox, but he's a lot more than that. He's a father, a hubby, a health coach, a colonic hydrotherapist, a teacher, my teacher, and many people, a podcaster, a YouTuber, a TikToker. He owns Ashland Gravity Colonic in Ashland, Oregon, formerly owned Vitality in New York, now owned by our girl Adriana. And he is a natural food chef. He's many things, but that's the abbreviated thing. I want to get into all the juicy questions that I have, and if you have any questions, send them our way. Everything related to health and wellness. We all know New Year's is a time where people make New Year's resolutions. I actually don't believe in that. I believe in having a word, 2 words, for the new year. But everyone kind of wants to check into their body and their health. So this is a perfect time. So, Mike, let me see if I can find you. I found you. Cadabra. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and voila. I love it when it works.
Hello. Good to see you.
Everyone's very pumped. They're like, everyone's coming. They've been waiting all day for you. So,
Oh, thank you. I hear the horns blaring in the background, and I'm like, there's New York City for you.
New York, just like I pictured it. Horns and everything. Anyway, let's get into some great questions, and if we have any time for any others, you're really good at reading questions. I'm not. So let's see where we're at. But first question, for anyone that can answer, you get a trip to Hawaii. What does a naked mole rat, pink flamingo, shark, elephant, salmon, and a NASA scientist have in common? Mike Perrine.
That question is the video that got me in a lot of trouble the last 2 weeks. I'll tell you.
I didn't know that. On TikTok?
Mostly on TikTok, a little bit on Instagram. So I posted that reel about.
Should I have not asked that question?
No. It's fine. I mean, that's what everybody's been messaging me about, talking about these days. There's very few health products that I get crazy about. Like, I've seen so many things over the years, and some of them, like, intellectually make a lot of sense. And I'm like, okay. And then I spend, $500 using it for a few months, and a bunch of clients use it. And then by the end of it, I just kind of conclude that, like, it makes sense in theory, but is it really as powerful as stuff like, the day-to-day juice and things? Like, no, it's not. It's not something that everybody needs to buy. And then there's like 3 of them that I think are just like top-notch, top level that I go, yeah, these are things that if you have the money, they're worth having in your, your supplement arsenal, And this was one of them, and it got me into some trouble because the video went a little bit viral, especially on TikTok, but on Instagram as well. And, I think because I used the C word, because I said cancer in it, it's...
That got you in trouble?
Well, it got me in trouble because it triggered a lot of responses from people, just in regards to, people that don't really understand the product, and they immediately want to jump in and start calling, snake oil and stuff like that. And I'm like,
yeah. Well, why don't you tell people? I mean, so I did a little homework. I watched that video. I watched you with your lipstick. I did homework, and I actually called them. I think I talked to them about type 1
Oh, yeah.
diabetic. So I did a little bit of homework. Why don't you tell people about the nasty scientist? Because it really began with Sam Shepard, right?
Yeah, this guy, I was introduced to him from Dr. Fred Bishey, and Dr. Bishey said, you know, Mike, there's this new I don't remember why it came up, but he said, hey, check this thing out, you know, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, an antioxidant extraction from a plant and algae. Like we've seen this before with like other things like Blue Magic from E3 Live. And I just thought it was another pigment-based, valuable antioxidant that, you know, it's great. Like if you want to take stuff like that, but it wasn't like a big deal. And Fred said, Mike, I didn't think it was a big deal either. He said, but here's the thing. He said, my clients were taking it, and he goes, they weren't even doing the right thing that he guided them on with diet. And he goes, a lot of them were going into remission. And he goes, in the beginning, I was just like, all right, coincidental, whatever. And then he said, so many of them, it happened to so many of them. He goes, I had to really see what it was about. He goes, I got some. I contacted this guy, Sam Shepard. They're now friends. He said, but it was really interesting how potent and powerful this product was. And then you hear Sam's story, and Sam developed this because he didn't invent astaxanthin. I mean, it's a thing that they either synthesize or they extract naturally. And it's in other products. They even sell it in Walmart, I believe. But, you know, Sam has a very special process with his that I can talk about. But, you know, he had a rare form of blood cancer. And he started eating the biomass of the algae. He didn't have an extraction process yet. He found out with his researchers that there's basically 5 animals that either don't get cancer or have a low incidence of cancer.
It's pretty incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. And, you know, I don't even know how it moves through the entire food chain for some of them. Like, I don't know how elephants have it in them, but all of these animals have this one molecule called astaxanthin in them. And, you know, I know how the salmon would get it because it's a saltwater algae and it works through those food chains of the water systems. But eventually it gets to land animals and elephants. I have no idea. So he was eating the biomass of it. He didn't know what to do with it yet. And he eventually healed his cancer. And he attributes it to the fact that there are 4 free radicals that underlie most of our disease states, and free radicals basically cause havoc in the structure of our cells. And you can neutralize them, and you can neutralize them with things like, you know, cherries and berries and green juices and vitamin C and oranges and stuff like that. That's the day-to-day. But then there's like really potent concentrations of it, of antioxidants that will neutralize them. And astaxanthin is like at the top. It neutralizes all of them. So that was his thinking on it. And the interesting thing about this guy is it's funny. He gives people Fred's book, Dr. Bishey's book, and he loves Fred and he talks about him all the time. But the guy like starts his day with like bacon and eggs, and he's got like a big belly, and like he's not.
I know. I saw that.
He's not like a super athletic or health conscious guy. He's, you know, he's a scientist. He's very intellectual about it, and he's still got the mind. Yeah. And he still got the results, you know, and it's just like, wow, that's how powerful maybe this product is. And I'm very upfront with people. I say, look, this is not a cure-all. Like, there's a lot of factors as to why people get well. And like, you know, I'm not saying it's going to heal everybody's cancer, but I'm saying that it happened with Sam, and it happened with enough of Dr. Bishey's clients, and it happened with enough of Sam's people that you can watch testimonials on. Not all of them, by the way, because everyone's at different stages and different abilities to heal based on the strength of their body, no matter what you put in.
And different cancers. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But many of them.
I think I wanted to, I mean, we have some great questions here. I wanted to begin with that question because I like blending, obviously, the both. I like blending hardcore science with a little bit of woo-woo, and I know that if, God forbid, I got really, really ill, that's how I would treat my body. I would combine the both. But one thing I know about you is that you do your research. You're very tough on what you bring in for you and your family. You're very clear on, you know, what standards you want. So when you were talking about this, I thought, you know what, it's a good intro question. And if anyone has any other questions about this, you can DM Mike or maybe I shouldn't say that, but you can start following Mike and you'll learn a lot more about the product.
Yeah. There's a link in my bio. if people want to go and see it, there's a discount code. There's a link in my bio. I am an affiliate, so I let everybody know that as well, because I really believe in it. But it's a great supplement to have in the arsenal. It's not a cure-all.
I mean,
amazing supplement.
and I was very impressed because when I watched your content, then I went on their video, and they were talking about a lot of conditions and type 2. And whenever I only hear type 2 diabetes and I don't hear type 1, I question why. And I emailed them and called them, and they called me back. And they were really incredible. So I talked to the team, and I got information that really helped me. So I might look into it. So question number 2. Every year there are new health trends. We all know that. It's like the buzzword. Some of them work, some of them don't. Talk to me about your feeling about kombucha, the myth and the value, because I know they're both.
Oh yeah, I mean, kombucha is a real interesting one. I got in trouble on this one too. These are the last 2 reels I got in trouble on. The reason I got in trouble on that
Don't yell at Mike.
The owner of GTS Kombucha sort of bitched me out a little bit on that one. And I, in all fairness, I was holding a bottle of his kombucha when I made the video. So you'll notice on my TikTok, it's blurred out now. I had put a blur box on top of it. But, I mean, kombucha is one of these things that it's very cool beverage. I drink them sometimes, but there's things that people, we tend to be susceptible to marketing and what's on the shelf at the health food store, whatever. Sort of like how Whole Foods, pulls the wool over everyone's eyes. Like you walk in there and it seems like you're in this, even if it's like the new, slick Whole Foods, it seems like you're in a healthy place. And they do have plenty of health food products on the shelves, but 80% of it isn't. Most of the produce isn't organic. 80% of the stuff is just regular stuff. You go to their produce case and you're like, okay, you read the ingredients. You're like, it's a brownie with a Whole Foods label on it. I can get that at Pathmark or wherever. So kombucha is sort of like the same thing. People look at it and they go, oh, it says gut health. Oh, it says, billions of bacteria and all this stuff. But when you look at it from the perspective of a colonic therapist and we see what it does inside the bodies of people, A, it's loaded with pressure. B, it's loaded with caffeine because it's made in a tea medium. C, it's made with white sugar most of the time. GTS now has changed and they make it with kiwi juice. But it's like a cooked kiwi juice concentrate, I think. So they figured out a way to do it. Kombucha always traditionally has been very challenging to make with other sugar mediums. People were like, oh, I'm going to make it with maple syrup so we don't use white sugar, or I'm going to use it with, and they could never make it properly and get it to ferment properly. White sugar was always the standard. Now they figured out kiwi juice. There is one that they make with honey, with raw honey. I try to drink those if I have them. But it's loaded with gas. It has caffeine in it, and it has residual white sugar in many cases in it, and it has trace amounts of alcohol. So now we might think okay, well, it has all those things. Maybe I don't care about those things because I'm getting all the beneficial bacteria, and there is some beneficial bacteria. But when they analyze scobies, and that's the SCOBY is symbiotic.
My mom made it.
Yeah. It's basically yeast and bacteria. It's a gelatinous ecosystem of yeast and bacteria, and they put it in the tea with the sugar, and it ferments it, and the bacteria proliferate. But it's mostly yeast fermentation in a lot of them, and you could even smell it. It smells a little like beer, like hopsy, you can smell that yeast fermentation.
And so it's not so great putting in the bottle. Yeah.
And a lot of that yeast is harmless. I mean, it's not it's going to give everybody candida or something. It's not like that. But it's not this probiotic super drink that everyone thinks it is. It's a gas-filled, caffeinated, white sugar sweetened, yeast fermented beverage. And it's hey, look, it's cool. It's better than soda. I drink them sometimes, but it's not quite what people think it is. So, the reason I made that video is because I get a lot of clients that walk in the door and then they're exploding with gas on the colonic table, and they're like, yeah, I'm always so gassy and I don't know what it is because I drink kombucha for my gut, and I'm like, bingo, that's it. If you shake up the bottle and open it, it's going to explode everywhere. And if it explodes in the bottle, it explodes in the body. Yeah.
It's going to explode in your body. Yeah. I mean, I don't drink it because of the sugar, but I think it's interesting. I don't want anyone to yell at you. Can no one yell at Mike? All right. Third question. My favorite conversation If you don't like it, then you can jump off. But I like talking about this, and Mike is right up Mike's alley. I want to talk about constipation. So, a good friend of mine, who will remain nameless, in a very dry area in Colorado, drinks a gallon of water a day. Also takes psyllium husk, eats very clean. I mean, animal protein, but not clean, you're clean, but clean. She's like clean. And she's constipated. So talk about you. I heard, I was re-listening to one of your interviews or the academy, and you talked about constipation, and you talked about the variables from eating to emotional trauma and the impact of movement regarding regularity. Tell us, spill the tea.
Well,
I mean, that's a
first,
lot. A gallon of water and psyllium husk.
yeah, so that's one of the reasons she's probably constipated too, is the psyllium, and I'm sure she took it to help remedy that situation. But psyllium husk actually, in a constipated system, will bond in with the retained waste, absorb water, and lock itself in, and it'll just sit there. And then, you know, if anyone's ever heard my first podcast with Gil, when he took too much psyllium and it didn't move, he talks about the treatment he had where he was pulling psyllium ropes out of his backside and it was filling up the toilet. Like, it's this horribly graphic story, but like, that's how that stuff accumulates in the body. In a well functioning system, psyllium can get the dust out of the corners, and it's a great intestinal cleanser. But for people with constipation, they put that in there, and sometimes they'll think they're getting results because it just accumulates, and through the action of pushing, it's just pushing waste because there's no more room. But it's not actually creating stimulation and emptiness. It's creating fullness and just pushing a little bit out the bottom. And that's not correcting that constipation issue. It's just kind of pushing some of the older stuff out, which I guess is good, but it's creating mass in the body. So I would get her to stop doing the psyllium. I would also highly recommend that she start every day with about 24 to 32 ounces of raw vegetable juice. Things like carrot, beet, apple, ginger, of course, some greens in there, but just to really start stimulating the bowels in a healthy way. And a little bit of natural calm, too, would probably work for her. But
Okay.
there's other reasons. But there's
And
other
what
reasons.
about the amount of water?
Oh, that amount of water is fine as long as she's maintaining her electrolytes, and as long as she's fully, if she's actually sweating it out. Like, if she's in a dry area and she's either sweating, or if she's letting it off through her skin and her breath and she's really like getting dry that way, then yeah, that should be enough water. A pinch of salt may help.
That's another important thing. Yeah, it's to sweat it out. Like that, you talk about that importantly. Like, you really need to, I think you say shit, eat, sweat or something, but you really need to sweat out things, right?
Well, as far as toxicity, yes, but I'm talking about more about her losing her water. I mean, that is a lot of water to be drinking, but there's another part to this. You know, the amount of water that we need to consume in order for the bowels to function healthily, but just in general, is in relationship to the other things that we're doing, right? So like, it's almost 3 p.m. here, and I had a glass of water this morning, I think, and I had this much water here today. That's it. But I haven't had any food except for a little bit of this, like, this is actually a smoothie. I had a little bit of the smoothie today. But if I were having like breakfast, bacon and eggs and a biscuit, or if I were having coffee, which pulls water out of the body, or tea, or if I were having lunch, which was like a sandwich or something, like, my body's going to need more water when I'm consuming food like that. But if you're just having either nothing or some fruits or berries, like, I'm not dehydrated right now because I haven't had,
Right.
2 of these today, right? So
That's
it
a great
depends on what
point.
else she's doing.
So it depends on what else you're putting in your body.
That creates a demand for water. There's other things that could dehydrate you, especially poor quality sodium can dehydrate you, make you extremely thirsty, meaning like it's not Himalayan or Celtic sea salt, but like someone's using some refined salts or salts in like processed food, or like high sodium soy sauce, like commercial products. Like, if you're using things like that, like, you're going to need more water. If you're drinking coffee or alcohol or any of those things, that's going to pull water out of your body. You're going to need more water than someone that's not creating that demand. But yeah, but that might be an appropriate amount for her. She might want to put a little bit of live active salt in that water, just for electrolytes, or an
Okay.
electrolyte powder, or replace a little bit of it with raw juice and or coconut water, and she'll do a lot
I
better than
love
if she's
that.
just water.
You did mention in one of your interviews about trauma and connection with constipation.
Yeah, there's generally like 3 to 4 reasons why people get constipated. I mean, of course, there's the food you put in things. I mean, if you put, and in the words of my teacher, Gil Jacobs, if you put, a square peg in a round hole, like it's not coming through. Like if you're eating macaroni and cheese and ice cream sundaes, like it's not all going to come out on the other side automatically, right? So that's the more obvious one. Dehydration is part of that. What we're putting in, like dehydration can cause everything to get really sticky or ball up inside of the body. Um, uh, Another thing is the results of being constipated. Sometimes there can be structural issues that then start to happen with the body. So like there could be areas of the intestine that enlarge, and then the nervous system's not working properly because it doesn't have the right pressure against the nervous system to stimulate bowel movements, and we end up with pockets and things like that. But emotional trauma is another big part of it. And like that can be something awful that happened to somebody, like sexually or something like that doesn't allow them to relax into just letting their body go and the freedom of releasing things. But also it could be something less obviously traumatic, but nonetheless still traumatic. Things like women growing up, young girls being told that like they're disgusting if they fart or poop, or like girls are never allowed to have like body functions, and then start manifesting that like in physical form in their life. Never, I have so many clients that are women, and I always hear like, oh, I've been away and I was in Miami all week with the new guy, and like I wasn't going to shit in that apartment that we stayed in at that Airbnb. So like they're like holding in poops and farts all weekend, and now they're trying to get in for a colonic. Like that consistently done will create long-term issues going to the bathroom. Yeah. So, and this happens in various forms in our cultures all over the place. Even like living in New York, like New York City does not allow us the luxury of going to the bathroom. Unless women can
Yeah.
get away with a little bit more, because like if a woman walks into a restaurant or something, they're less likely to say no. But like I remember me like being all juiced up, drinking juice and water and hydrate, and I always got to pee or do. And I'm walking around the city, and it's like you go into a store. No, customer, no bathroom for customers. Okay, then go to a restaurant. No, you're buying something. You say you can't come in here. No, you can't.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh my
And then
God,
you're
where am I going to
holding it.
go? I'm going to go on the street. So you end up holding it all day. It's the worst. Yeah. So our culture doesn't even. Our culture celebrates
Uh,
retention. Yeah.
well, not here. Not here. Not with Mike. Okay, so you have many different teaching forums. You're on IG Live a lot where you do these great random Q&As that are brilliant. If you're not following Mike, follow him. He'll pop on in between, daddy duty, husband duty, life duty, and he'll do a quick Q&A, and you can just shoot him questions and you'll be blown away by the wealth of information. But you created an everyday detox academy course, which I took, which is brilliant. It's all these little vignettes of areas that cover. I've learned about supporting kidney fiber, white tongue issues. Tell us about the program, how we can get it. Tell us about Vitality Broom Cleanse and this one, the transient test time. Yeah, I really love the transient test time that all of you here can do. It's very easy. Yeah.
The academy is it's the greatest piece of work I think I ever created, because I realized when I made it that that somebody, particularly practitioners that want to become nutritional detox consultants or colonic therapists or health coaches or whatever, I realized that everything I put in there, like 90% of it, you can build your entire career on. Of course, there's going to be subtleties and things that you have to figure out with individual clients, but those practices and those principles, I've built my entire 22 year career on doing that now. And I realized somebody could literally learn that and just use that immediately in their practice. It's so valuable to me. And basically what I did, the signature course at the Academy is called Eliminating the Toxic Load. And it's the principles and practices that I've put into effect in my own life and with my clients. I've done it for 30 years now. With clients, I've done it for 22 years. And it's a 3.5-hour course where I go into depth on all of it. And I'll tell people straight up, I talk about a lot of this stuff outside of the course. I have hundreds of hours of podcasts, saved highlights, Instagram lives, posts, TikToks, YouTube videos, like, but you got to go through hundreds of hours to get to the point on all that stuff. So if you really like to do that, but if you want it in the most concise and concentrated and organized form, I put it all into that. It's just 22 years of work right into that. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
And no, it's a real gem. And for any of you that are confused and you think you might be overwhelmed by any of the data or anything that we've talked about here, Mike is such a brilliant teacher because he's so clear. I mean, he's a genius, and I feel like a dummy, but I never feel like a dummy with him because you're so clear at teaching. And then you're like, oh, I actually am not a dummy. I get it. So I appreciate it. I love it. So the Vitality Broom Cleanse and the Transient Test. Yeah.
Yeah. The Vitality Broom Cleanse is that, by the way, this is just a little handout that we use. I used it at some events in Oregon, but there's a link in my bio to get the full cleanse. It has recipes in it, and it has like a 3 to 4 page explanation of how all of this works. And I developed it as a way for clients to get prepared for their colonics. So it's the ultimate way to set up for body work, but it's really the ultimate way to set up for life, because all these juices and smoothies and the concepts are going to help open the channels of elimination. And this was sort of my response to the master cleanse or like juice fasting, because those are really great juice fasting in particular, but not everybody's like willing to get on board with that, and they needed something a little more day to day. So that's why I developed this here.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's the #1 way to break up waste in the intestine. I'm drinking a broom smoothie right now. Like I do these every day. Like I'm drinking one of them right now. That's in that thing.
Let's just throw in the quick question. Thoughts on daily pineapple cucumber juice with ginger from Diane.
That sounds delicious to me. Whenever you're drinking fruit juice without any fiber to it, though, just make sure that you're active or it's not too sugary, because dumping straight up sugar into a body that doesn't move, which is the case for a lot of people, probably not for the person that asked this question, but I'm just putting it out there. Fruit juices, you want to make sure that they are A, happening on an empty stomach, and B, that fruit sugar has somewhere to go. And that's any sugar, really. But you want to make sure it has somewhere to go, meaning that the body's going to grab it and bring it to the cells and utilize it.
Okay. So the transient test time, which I thought was great, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it, is you say take 1 to 2 handfuls of white sesame seeds, throw it in a bowl of salad and avocado, or steamed veggies if you eat cooked food. Mark the time that you ate it. Then mark the time when you see, cover your ears if you can't handle it, but you see the seeds in the toilet, and then mark how many days you see them. And I think ideally, and always squat when you go to the toilet, people, squat. But the perfect way to eliminate is you want to see the seeds within a 24-hour period.
Ideally somewhere around 24 hours. It might be less, it might be more, but look, if it's a few hours over or whatever, or half a day over, it's not a big deal. But I've had people take this sesame seed test where they make this and this salad is very specifically formulated because, it's not too heavy.
What kind of seed? White sesame seed, right?
White sesame.
No, not toasted. Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably do black sesame seeds, but look, the white ones are going to stand out in your poop, and you're going to go, there they are. So that's why we do the white sesame.
Yeah.
And we don't. Most people don't chew every single one of them, so that's why you're going to end up seeing a bunch of sesame seeds. And you're putting in. I actually changed that these days. I don't do handfuls as much anymore, but I say take like a couple of tablespoons, more than you would ever garnish something with. Just put a bunch. You're eating a salad with like they spilled the sesame seeds when they were garnishing your salad,
Okay.
kind of situation. And don't eat sesame seeds leading up to it, you know, because you want it to just be that day. Don't eat any more after it, and then wait till you see them. And I've done this with people where they're like, Mike, I did that test, and it was 4 or 5 days until I saw sesame seeds come out in the toilet, and then I saw them for another 4 or 5 days trailing out of my body. And what it's showing is a slow transit time where they could be holding on to 16 meals in their gut at once, and it's showing that they're showing that the food that they're eating isn't completely sweeping and eliminating from the bowel. So then you have sesame seeds trailing out over 4 or 5 days because there's little spots that are sticking around and getting pulled out later.
And there might be blockage or sluggish or things that haven't moved. Because at the end of the day, we want things to move, right?
Always. Transit is the biggest part of the human body.
Transit, come in, come out, come in, come out. So what is the brand of toilet stool stool that you like? Oh, I think Squatty Potty.
I think that I think the Squatty Potty is great for pedestrians. I think professionals need to squat on the bowl. Squat right on top of that thing. Yeah, no training.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't use the Squatty Potty.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What if you fall off?
It's good. It's good for your balance. It's good for your hips. It's good for your back, and it aligns everything, and it drops out. We're really designed to squat.
But what if your hips aren't that open, like right on the? Really? Wow, I'm gonna have to try that.
That's the way to do, and if you do it long enough, if you do it for a month or so, you'll never be able to go back.
I know, Diane. You gotta have a really good core for that, though, right?
I've been doing it for 25, 30 years, so I don't know.
Oh my God, I'm gonna tell Billy, watch out, I might be falling off the toilet. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. Oh, 2 little things on me. So 2 things. One, very abbreviated. When people don't know me, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in April of 18. At the time that the doctor told me while she was typing on her computer, not looking at me, she said, and you have pancreatic cancer and spleen cancer, and gallbladder has to be removed, without looking at me. So I fired her. I don't have spleen cancer. I don't have pancreatic cancer. It was a poor reading. So that's a news flash for everyone. Really pay attention to what they're telling you, because it's not always accurate. Always get a second or a third opinion. But my gallbladder does have polyps. And I went to this really great Japanese, can you turn that light back on, honey? I went to this great Japanese doctor, and he said, you've got tiny, tiny little polyps. Keep an eye on them. And then I went to another doctor, and they said, I want to remove your gallbladder. And I'm like, why? I don't want you to cut me or remove it. So what is your opinion on polyps? And when people tell you, I want to cut out your gallbladder, even though I probably know what you're going to tell me.
Well, gallbladder polyps, I think 4 to 7, you only see, it's rare actually. It's only 4 to 7% of people, adults, get gallbladder polyps. And out of that 4 to 7%, I think only 5% become cancerous. So I get the concern from a liability medical perspective, because but it is a small chance that's going to happen. Normally, what people do though is they watch them. So you'd have to have it watched. You'd have to have it monitored if you were concerned with it at all. But it's such a small percentage of people that actually develop cancer, and as we know, cancer doesn't just appear randomly out of nowhere. Like there's a whole symphony of chemistry that happens to create that environment anyway. So like if it were me, and I'm not telling anybody what to do, and they said, hey, you have gallbladder polyps, I would say, well, that's really strange. But I know that, I cross my T's and dot my I's with my nutrition, my health, and my cleansing, that I'm probably not going to let them take my gallbladder out just proactively when there's a 95% chance it's not going to become cancerous. Yeah. So that would be my approach. And I would, of course, maintain all of the cleansing practices and diet and everything that I do to lower inflammation and prevent cancer and neutralize free radicals.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing that. Not as well as you, but I'm doing that. So the other thing that's really interesting is when you are diabetic, and I don't know if there are any diabetics here, they tell you that you're going to get everything. Like you're going to get eczema, your skin is going to change. If you really don't take care of it, you're going to have heart issues. You're going to have a neuropathy. You're going to have a lot of domino effect, which in the beginning, I had a fair amount of domino effect. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to take back my health and with a little bit of help from you. I really have. And my hair is a really interesting thing because when I first got diagnosed, the condition of it changed right away. And then I got really on board and healthy, and it was perfect again. And now it's like trickling in a little bit where it's like something's going on. Talk to us about the reading of how you look at hair. It's something that, I mean, I know you don't have any, but with your clients, you don't look at hair. Sorry, that was bad. You don't look at hair, but with your clients, is hair an important thing to look at when you're looking at health?
I mean, yes. I mean, it depends. It's not as much when we're looking at, usually when we're looking at what's happening with somebody's hair, it's usually in the process of a new diet change and detoxification process. So meaning when I first got into this, the raw food movement was at like its peak. It was having its moment in the early 2000s, and everyone in New York was like going to David Wolf lectures, and when he would come through town and they would read some book, and all of a sudden, like that weekend, they decided, I'm a raw foodist now. It was like this big exciting thing, and people detoxed hard, and they lost some of them lost, because these are like, what, 45-year-old New Yorker that, used to smoke and party in the 90s, and now all of a sudden they read a book, and now, so they would detox really hard. And what we would see a lot of the time is we would see rapid weight come off, and sometimes a lot of hair would come out. And what we would do to help that process is we would either scale back the diet to start including cooked foods and make it a little more of a training wheel situation instead of this whole like, I'm in a raw food Lamborghini now, just going, like we'd be like, no, let's bring it back. You're on a tricycle, and we're gonna bring it back a step so your body doesn't purge as deeply as quickly. Or we would up the cleansing game. So we're like, okay, if you're going to go hard on your juice fast that you've never done before, or your raw food diet, like we're going to be seeing you a couple of times a week for colonics, and while you're here, do some saunas. And a lot of the times that would remove enough acidity from the body that the hair would start to rebound. When the body goes into a state of cleansing, and there's a lot of reasons why people might have trouble with hair or their hair falls out, so including genetics and things like that, and stress, which is when I lost a lot of my hair. I remember when it started to happen at a very stressful year in my life. But in regards to the way we tend to work with it on the treatment table, we're usually working with people in some state of detox, and in that state of detox, the body is purging stored waste, and it can create an acidic condition in the body. And temporarily, it could not look too good if you looked at someone's blood under a microscope, or if you looked at like their hair quality, or if you look at how much weight they're losing so quickly. That's the body breaking itself down. And on the other side of it, especially with assistance from the practices I talked about, it'll rebuild itself. Like if you look at pictures of me when I first started cleansing, like I was much thinner. I was like, like I had like a clearness to my skin and my eyes looked good, but like you can tell that my body was like doing something, so anyway, hair falling out is another one of those, and a lot of the times it corrects itself once we clear that purging of acidity from the tissue. Yeah, that can happen.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I think hair is really important. I mean, people talk about tongue and nails, but I think hair is an important thing to look at, and the quality of hair. And anyway, so thank you for that. You have a little one. Is he 2.5 now, Ever?
2.5.
He's adorable.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. He's so adorable. And if you go on Mike's Instagram, I mean, your heart will melt because, like, he's at the market and he's holding these, like, fruit and he's pulling the chicken at home. And I'm so in love with him. He's the coolest kid and with the perfect teeth and probably a beautiful gut. So, what is the best tip?
Next level.
You heard it here, Ever. So, what is the best tip that you have for parents of a young toddler, 2 to 5 years old? And what is the best tip that has ever taught you and Holly?
Wow, wow, wow. Okay. I mean, parenting tips for me. Um, we'll keep it to the nutritional detox stuff that I talk about. I think parenting tips, is that kids will eat what we create the food ecosystem of what's normal to a kid, and we shape the taste of what that child is going to eat, right? So if you look at, I'm talking about how great my son's poops are. He eats radishes and carrots and celery and fruits, and he just like he loves and craves those foods, and he doesn't throw tantrums because he wants goldfish because he's never had them. So keeping
Yeah,
that at some point, and I do talk about this, and I've talked about this in many places. We do need to let our children have their lives even at a young age, because they're going to go to the birthday party, and you don't want to make them the weird kid and create drama around food, and you don't want to mess up their
yeah,
psychology of food. But when it's in your control, though, like if you really give them nourishing things, like they'll really want them. They'll really want them.
they will.
My son rips kale off of the kale that we grow, and he's just walking around chomping on it. And he loves pea greens, and he loves all these foods. And it's just we teach our children what their relationship to the food system is. We're essentially teaching that by showing by what we have in the house, by what they
By
watch us
example.
do. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
by
have to see us do that.
example.
And I always feel bad for the parents that I talk to moms sometimes on Instagram or whatever, and they'll be like, yeah, I just can't, my kid, is having these issues. Like they won't eat whatever, that they won't drink a smoothie. They only want this or that or whatever. And I go, well, why is that even in the house? Like, I don't understand, like, why there's all this process. Why are there Pop-Tarts in the house? And they're like, oh, well, my husband eats it, and my husband, whatever, you know what I mean? And that gets really tricky,
Yeah.
one of the child has to be able, for a healthy relationship to food, a child has to be able to eat as what's the right wording on this? They have to be able to be as lenient with their food choices as the most lenient person in the household, right? So like,
And there has to be a real team on it. Yeah. Like
dad,
husband and wife have to work
yeah,
together. Yeah.
dad can't eat corn chips that the kid's not allowed to eat, because
Yeah.
then it's like,
Yeah.
well, first of all, it's going to make them want it more. But second of all, it's like the kid's like, well, what is that? What is that? Like, so you're going to eat this. It's okay
Yeah.
for you, but it's not okay. And that goes for, alcohol and cigarettes and all those other things as well. So,
Guilty pleasure. And what has ever taught you or Holly that you're like, what? You're incredible. I'm sure he taught you a lot.
so many things, and it's so many things. And it's also like what my first son, I have an older son too. He's 31 now. And it's, I talk about this a lot with friends of mine about it's to have children or not have children. It's both the right choice. You know what I mean? Like it's both, like there's value in both of those things. But I say, but having children is such a profound, deep human spiritual experience, because we're bringing you bringing a soul into the physical world. Like, it's like, it's not matter of fact, like, and it changes people so deeply. And and I had asked my wife about this before when I saw the questions that you had sent me via email, and I was like, and I said, hey, I'm just curious, what do you think, what is ever one of the most like profound things he's taught you, because of course there's many. And she was, and I agree, this would be my answer too. It's about unconditional love, right? So it's about like the statement of, there's nothing that can happen that would ever make me stop loving you. Nothing. Like nothing. Like, if that's one of the most profound things. Like, you could have a friendship where you like love your friend, and then they do something really fucked up, and you might be like, I'm cutting ties. People even like, like, it's like they do this with siblings, they do this with, but when you look at your child and you're like, there is nothing. Like, it could be the word, like, like my toddler punches me in the face sometimes, and you know what I mean? But I even mean in life, like, you always have this bond like this cord to your child, and all the parents know this cord to your child where they could fuck up so bad as an adult even, and nothing's ever going to change that. You're like, I will still be your guide and your ally through your biggest fuck ups. It doesn't matter what it is. Like
what a
never
beautiful gift.
Yeah, and
what a beautiful gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really, really, really beautiful gift. So thank you for that, and thank you, Holly. I had a question from a friend of mine. Calcium supplements. One doctor will say yay, another doctor will say nay. What do you think about them?
I think that most people don't need to take calcium supplements. I've read data on how there's a connection between taking supplemental calcium and heart disease now, and that it can get a little bit tricky. And taking any supplements is always a manipulation of the chemistry because it's not naturally occurring in food. Doesn't mean that they're not okay to take. And it's volume dependent, like how much calcium is someone taking, because taking too much, and what's the source? Taking too much inorganic mineral is not a good thing either, right? But I would say that calcium, two things. Calcium can be found in most plant foods and green juices in abundance, where a supplement usually isn't necessary. And if someone says, well, I have some bone density things, or I have it's more likely that the reason that they are coming to the conclusion that they need calcium is because there's some type of acid condition in the body bleeding calcium, magnesium, and other alkaline minerals out of the bones and tissue. So putting it back in isn't necessarily the answer to that, but removing this low-level acidosis is. And then you don't need the calcium as much anymore because your body can actually take calcium.
How would you remove that?
You would look at the diet. If the diet is too heavy in acidic foods like animal protein, or if the body is set up for retention, meaning like lots of clogging foods, constipation, in a free, clear, open system that's not creating a lot of it. Now, look, you can also create a lot of acidity through stress and thinking, and generate your own free radicals and things like that. But if you're able to keep the channels of elimination open, you're able to eat food that's not creating an acid burden on the chemistry, then you're good. And it's really easy to find alkaline foods. It's mostly all plant foods, but you can get like the acid alkaline guide, and you can just look at it. And basically it just means like, look, lots of water, starting your day with green juices, eating salads with your meals, trying to eat as many plant-based meals as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be vegan. And balancing out animal food with plant food. And that's really it. Like that takes the acid load off the body very quickly. But to help neutralize them, green juices really work well. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Someone was talking about having chemotherapy and how it really messed up with her bone density. I don't know if you can help with answering that, or maybe you can. Like, what would you recommend to that person?
I would do just that. I would really get into juicing if I were that person. Not a lot of fruit. A little bit to make your juice taste good, but like really get into like celery, cucumber, kale, parsley, like those deep green juices that are just loaded in calcium.
That'll help with the bone density?
Yeah, and don't have any dairy products. Have no dairy products, and limit your animal protein.
No dairy, limit animal protein, and lots of juicing. Did you hear that? Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that. Thank you. V equals P minus O. Tell me what that means.
The king over here. And by the way, there have been studies highlighted in John Robbins' books. Diet for a New America and May All Be Fed is a great one. I don't know if it's still in print. Great book, where they talk about there's a huge correlation between dairy consumption because of the excess protein in dairy designed to turn a little calf into like a giant steer in a very short amount of time. That humans drinking this milk, it actually leads to osteoporosis and calcium getting pulled from the bones, the tissue, and the teeth. So there's a tribe I believe it was an African tribe, can't remember the name of it, of that tribe, but the women would have like 8 children in 10 years. Like they would have basically a child a year. and they consumed no dairy products, and they mostly wild foods. They weren't a vegan culture, I don't believe, but they ate a lot of plant foods, and they probably ate some meats that they hunted, but absolutely no dairy products. Had 8 children with breastfeeding, all of these kids, no osteoporosis, period, in this tribe. And it's not genetic. It had to do with the diet not creating the acidity in their body, all that excess protein from drinking dairy products. So like they weren't take. So we have this thing in our culture about, bone density. We cure this with adding in lots of minerals. We take something like milk that's very calcium dense and we add it in, and the bones will just build themselves up. But it works. It's actually the reverse. It creates an acid condition that pulls the minerals out of the body. And by the way, this is this study that he the initial studies that he looked at when he was illustrating this was from the Journal of the American Medical Association and Lancet. So like they've known this since the 70s that the consumption of animal dairy products causes osteoporosis. Yeah. So anyway, interesting side note. But so that's why I say go deep on the mineral-rich plants that are going to lower that acid load, because that'll allow the bones to rebuild themselves. By the way, I think I left out a piece here. When the body
the vitality equals pressure minus obstruction. V equals P minus O.
That's Professor Arnold Ehret. But let me finish that last point. When the body becomes too acidic, it has to buffer the acidity by pulling minerals out of the bones and tissue. That's why that works that way. That's why dairy products cause it. They cause an acid condition that the body has to self-correct by pulling the minerals out of its own tissue and reserves. And that leaves Swiss cheese bones, because the body's constantly buffering acid.
That's fascinating. Someone asked plant-based milk, almond, oat, pea, any feelings about any of that?
The radical answer is that all the packaged stuff is garbage. It's all garbage. It's all inflammatory seed oils mixed with sugar and then blended in with oats or almonds or whatever, right? I remember the first time I made soy milk like 30 years ago, and it tasted like bean water. And I was like, wait, this doesn't taste good. And then I looked at the package, and like the first 2 ingredients were oil and brown rice syrup solids and then soybeans. And I was like, oh, wait, this is fat emulsified with sugar with soybeans, So like, and I realized like, oh, okay, these things don't taste naturally good on their own. Making it raw is great. Like a raw almond milk, even without dates, even without a little vanilla, raw almond milk tastes delicious. You add some dates and vanilla and then it's like really good. But these things generally.
How do you make your almond milk?
I have a recipe on, if they go down just a few stories down on my post, and I think there's a saved highlight reel. I basically take almonds, walnuts, or pecans or another nut, blend them with like 4 to 5 cups of water, 1 cup of nuts to 4 cups of water, blend it, strain it, add it back to the blender, scrape in a little vanilla bean, little tiny pinch of sea salt, a few dates. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of coconut meat or a couple of cashews to give it body, blend it up again, and then you get this rich, creamy milk. And it's all raw. It's not processed. There's no stabilizers. There's no preservatives. There's no oils drizzled in there. It's just the natural oils from the almonds or the walnut or whatever. So
I love that. I always ask this question, and then you tell me if you want to take any questions. If you had another career, what would it be?
I would be.
The top of your head.
I would be, and I might become, depending on how my life goes, a fantasy writer at some point.
Wow.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, I've been writing a story for over 20 years, and actually, 21 years now. 21 years, because I started shortly after September 11th, and that's how I always remember it. And I would love to do that, and that was actually going to be one of my first career choices, but life did not take me that way. So,
would be fun. And then dinner party with 3 people, dead or alive.
Oh wow, dead or alive. Dinner party number 1. It's more about someone I want to talk to. I don't think this person would want to be at my dinner party, but just because they'd be like, why am I here? But Malcolm X was a huge influence in my life.
Well, I remember.
Yeah. So much respect for Malcolm X and what he taught me in regards to self-responsibility. So I would love for Malcolm X to be there. Dr. Fred Bishing, my teacher, who is alive and well, 95 years old now. Would love
Unbelievable.
to.
Frankie,
What was that? Go ahead.
sorry, puppy training. No, and the third person.
I would want to invite my high school principal, Sister Mary Ellen, to come sit down with us and have a conversation. She unfortunately died of breast cancer. I was a really bad kid, and she was always so great to me and understood how to work with me. So, yeah, New York Catholic.
That would be a great dinner.
Right? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Dr. Fred Bishing, Sister
That
Mary
would
Ellen,
be a great
Malcolm X.
One little thing, and then if there are any questions, and then I know you have to go, and Frankie says hi to all of his followers. I feel, and maybe it's me or maybe it's the media, that I'm hearing a lot more younger people getting very ill and actually dying. I mean, there was the journalist in Qatar at the World Cup who died of an aneurysm. He was like in his 30s or 40s. There was the MSNBC guy, perfectly healthy, had a heart attack at like 40. I'm hearing a lot more of aneurysms, like radical, very quick ways of dying at a younger age. I don't want to be morbid, but is there any thought that you have on that? Like, am I hearing it more because we're talking more, or there's more than that behind it, I think?
One of the things I've had friends that died of colon cancer and other cancers real young. And I think about like how we grew up, what we ate, what we did, what type of stuff we did when we were partying or whatever. And it's like, I mean, the reason that human beings are, to me, like when I contemplate life and all these things and I go, wow, like human beings are, the reason that we're here for spiritual growth is like one of the things that indicates that we're here for spiritual growth is our resilience, right? So for like, we can live so out of balance with nature and stay alive. We can screw up so many times. We can be addicts. We can shovel all sorts of things that are non-foods in our mouth. We can develop disease, go get things cut out and radiated and burned and chemoed and still somehow survive for a while. And like we have a lot of chances, right, in regards to that. When you see other animals, like, which are also spiritual beings, but when you look at the rest of nature, interestingly, very small things can sometimes create species extinction, like a temperature change or a pH change, and like there's a chain reaction of death. Like we are so less fragile than a lot of other animals. And so when I look at it, I mean, we're swimming in a toxic soup. Like it's pretty, so the fact that people are dying younger and younger makes sense. I mean, I just went to the doctor, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they were like, well, they've changed the age for colonoscopies now. Like now I think it's 45 or something like that.
They have?
So she's like, you should really go get a colonoscopy. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't think I'm going to do that. But it makes sense, like, because people's diets are getting grosser and grosser. We're coming from a lineage of people that are poisoned into more poisoned babies, into people that then have more children that are inherently, and I talk about this in Eliminating the Toxic Load, how we inherit the toxicity of our lineage. And yeah, so it makes total sense to me that we're dying younger and younger. It makes total sense. It is only through medical heroics that we have people living longer than they've ever lived, unless we're talking about like Okinawa or something. But like in the Western world, and I'm in New York City and America, and like, yeah, if people are living a really age, it's either really good genetics or medical heroics that are creating that, because we swim in a toxic soup, and of course, there's stuff that's gone down in the last 2 years. Then there's been like, new things circulating in the bodies of the country, and the world. So, and
a lot of new things.
But it's synergistic. Right. So like there's people that had them and they'll have no ill effect. And we will never know if that had anything to do with the reason they died the day that they died. But there's like all these synergistic things happening in the chemistry. There's this like toxic symphony of chemicals. And and inflammatory agents in all the different pathways of the body, in the
Oh, I
lymph
didn't
system.
know they put a time. I just got a timer. I didn't know they went back to doing a time on interviews now.
Oh, we've been
We have
talking for an hour.
17 seconds. So
Oh,
where can people find you?
uh,
Yeah, I never
um,
knew they were doing a timer. Wait 10 seconds. Where can people find you?
connect to me right here on my Instagram account. That would be awesome.